Well, you can start on it while I do it here if you want.
No, that's okay. Watching it a second time is a good thing.
Okay. So the process now is to take the face that's been sewn together and lay it out so that we have it square. That's the number one process. And then the number two process will be to attach both the backing material and the silk material to that face once we've squared it. Now the Roxu will have lines on it from when we made the panels, and the lines will be right leaving the selvage. There's the remnant of that line. I actually have already done this process, so the lines you see are the ones that I'm going to be telling you to be making. The thing to do is to make it square, and to do that, we first figure out what the measurements between the existing selvage lines are. We look at the top, and here it's about 26.4. Then we look at the bottom to see what it is, and it's 26.2. No, 25.9. Excuse me, it's 25.9. So we take the shortest of the two. Now, while we've done that, we go to this chart and we put the shortest of the two both in the area that says top and bottom. So here it says 25.9, 25.9, because that was the shortest of those two measurements. The same process occurs on the side where we measure it, and on one of these it was 16.4 and the other is 16.2. So we take 16.2 as the smallest of the two. We again take this chart, we put 16.2 where it says side on that. Let's do the measuring of the actual laying out. We want to make it perfectly rectangular with perpendicular corners. In other words, square it up. We start with a corner. This is the corner I happen to start with. And we want to just get starting from that place. We draw a line across the top, draw a line down here. That gives us one square corner. We don't worry about the measurements at this point. Now, from that square corner, looking at our chart, we go across the top 25.9, put a marker. We go across the bottom, put a dot at 25.9. We do the same thing with the sides. We come down the side here and we take the shortest measurement, 16.2, put a dot. Come here, 16.2, put a dot. We now take our square and we connect the dots. So we have those two lines drawn. We come in here, draw a line, finding the dots, come in here, and draw a line. For the moment, we put this aside. We come in and we basically make a cumulative total, meaning, and I'll use the example that I have, and the one I sent to you is one that I scanned, so you'll have my example. You add 1 and 4.2, which comes to 5.2. You add 5.2 and 25.9, which comes to 31.1. Of course, that number will be unique for you. So these are just my numbers. You'll make your own. And we do a cumulative sum that way, where the totals total it all up. This is the place where you do this 2 or 3 times, or do it with a calculator so that you make sure this is right. If these numbers are wrong and you end up making your frame, there's only one solution, and that is you take the frame off and you have to start all over. There's no way to fudge. So these numbers need to be correct. Okay. Moving right along. Once you've done that, you take this, and now what is probably almost impossible to see, and it's also backwards and upside down for you guys, which I apologize, but I always lay it out so this is the top and this is the bottom. And how do you tell whether there's the top and the bottom? Well, there's many ways, but the way I always check is that, as you call, when we sewed them, we had to do flaps in certain directions. So when I run my fingernail down, this is like a shingle. This piece lays on top of this piece. In other words, if rain were to flow on a shingle, it would flow over and not catch. If I come up, my fingernail catches in the flap. Here's the downward flap, here's the downward flap, here's the downward flap, here's the downward flap, here's the downward flap. So this is the bottom of the rock suit, this is the top of the rock suit. It doesn't matter in this particular step, but I just do that to continue being oriented at all times. So what we want to do is we want to now take the facing material, which is the one that's not silk, and we want to attach this. So I'm turning it, picking it up, and I'm putting it like that because it's going to go on the back. Now I'm just centering it. This is, let me see what I've got here. That's a little better. I don't know if you can see. I'm just putting it in, facing it, doing it by eye. Bringing it down, bringing it down, bringing it down, flattening it out, getting it nice and flat. Now, what I did, and I don't need to do for the video here, is I turned this thing over and I ironed it on the back side. So this is nice and ironed and flat. Once I iron, and you iron it on the back side, not on the front side, because it can get shiny after you iron a while. But since this is the back side, that's okay. So we lay it on the facing. Now, once it gets laid on the facing, we're just going to go with the flatness that we get. So we kind of make sure it's very flat, it's been ironed, because once we put it on and pin it on, that's it. That's what we get. So I'm going to start. Yeah.
But should we iron it before we measure the front?
Yeah, sure. It's a good idea.
It's going to stretch out.
Yeah, makes sense. So I'm starting in that corner. Sometimes you start here and go outward. Well, this is just getting it pinned. That's a good question. Any other questions that come up, we just resolve them and put them into the video. It's good. Okay, I'm going to put some pins in here. As with many of the processes, I think, the layout is one of the most critical parts. The sewing is fairly mechanical, as we all know. Billy, I appreciate that you want to keep practicing. That's the way to do it. And when I was with the sewers the other night, they were talking to a person that was just headed off to the monastery where they have absolutely no free time whatsoever. I mean, none. But he said to the person, just to keep your stitches automatic, do 4 stitches a day. I mean, what would 4 stitches a day take? 20 seconds, a minute at the most? And then I thought, wow, that's a great, great suggestion. 4 stitches a day. You might put in a couple more here. You get the idea. You want to pin it down. Okay. Now, the next thing we do is we're going to do some sewing. And I did not thread my needle beforehand, so here we go. Good luck. I'm going to take this needle. You guys see I don't know what you have for this, but I have both this pin cushion and this to keep my stuff together. My tool kit together. And you just take white thread. It can be white cotton thread. I'm just using this thread. One of the tips with threading a needle is get as close to the base that you're trying to push through as possible. If you're just like less than a centimeter from the base, then you can usually get a much better push. And I tend to have thread that's longer than most, and it tends to tangle, but I'm trying to get this so I don't have to do it twice. So I'm going to get 1 length, 2 lengths, one side, another side. Okay, so this is probably a little bit longer thread than makes it easy because it tends to tangle. But the stitch that we're using is not the Namu Kie Butsu stitch. The stitch we're going to use is just a complete running stitch. So I think you guys have seen before how I make the knot at the back. Everybody has their own method. I forget what other experienced sewers do, but I go like that and roll it and go like that, and there's my knot. And what I'm going to do is it's going to start and now we have this line that we've drawn in here now, and about halfway between that line and this edge, this raw edge, we're going to do a running stitch. This is all going to be hidden. This is just to hold it down. So there's my thread. And about, I don't know if you can see it or not, but that's about the size of the stitch. Let me get closer here. This is where it can catch on a pin if you're not careful. Can you see the size of the stitch there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not a big deal. And then you just run around the edge. Until it's sewn to it.
This is a basting stitch, basically.
Yes.
That tack it down. You can use whatever color, but it's not actually sewing it.
You're right, it's a basting stitch. It stays in, Vicky, it doesn't come out, but it's a basting. Is that what it's called, a basting stitch?
Well, but you're using white thread on the black. That's why I was wondering.
Yeah. Yeah.
It never stay?
Oh, it stays, yeah. But it's completely hidden. Our
Okay.
face piece comes to here.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing that comes around the
Right.
The frame?
frame, the frame comes down to here. So these stay in and they are on the inside forever. Now, I won't continue with this right now, but imagine that it's been done all the way around. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take your silk and you're going to iron your silk. Now, when I do iron the silk, I do put a cloth, a white cloth, covering cloth when I iron my silk. And those lines from when it was folded didn't seem to come out when I did it. And what we're going to do then is we're going to put the silk on the other side, and contrary to what it says in the written instructions, I was told that it doesn't matter which side of the silk faces out. Formerly, people had said there were two kinds of faces to the silk, and one of them was good for writing on and one of them wasn't. This time they're saying just put it on. Now, you get the principle here. The silk has to be, of course, the silk is smaller here. It's obviously smaller than the facing, but it still has to be so that it's way outside the rakusu itself. And once you've done that, then you do the same thing with white thread. You put a basting stitch all around. Well, you pin this, same way we pinned the other. Then you baste it onto the backing there. Before I stop the video, are there any questions for clarifying this? Okay. Let me stop the video.